I arrived at my son Michael's house for Sunday dinner after being specifically invited by him. As I entered the dining room, I saw the family seated around an elaborate spread of lobster, prime rib, and champagne. My daughter-in-law Jennifer coldly announced, "We don't serve extra food," while pushing only a glass of water toward me. The rest of the family sat frozen as Jennifer added, "You should know your place, Mom." I simply smiled, said noted, and watched as a renowned chef emerged from the kitchen. 3 days before that horrible Sunday, my phone rang at 7 in the morning. It was Michael, my only son, and his voice carried that familiar nervous energy that told me something was up. "Mom, you have to come to Sunday dinner," he said, almost pleading. "Jennifer specifically asked for you to be there. She said, it's important." Those words should have made me happy. After 5 years of marriage to my son, Jennifer had systematically excluded me from nearly every family gathering. But something in Michael's tone made me wary. Still, I agreed. How could I not? He was my son. The boy I'd raised alone after his father Samuel passed away 10 years ago. As I drove to their house that Sunday afternoon, memories flooded back of all the times Jennifer had made it crystal clear I wasn't welcome in her perfect little world. There was the Thanksgiving where she'd forgotten to set a place for me at the table, claiming she'd miscounted. The Christmas where my gifts to my granddaughter Emma were hidden in the basement, only to be discovered months later. The birthday parties where I'd arrived to find the celebration already over, Jennifer sweetly explaining they'd had to start early. But the worst part wasn't the exclusion. It was the subtle cruelty when I was included. Jennifer had perfected the art of making me feel small. She'd serve her parents, Harold and Margaret, elaborate 4-course meals, while sliding a plate of reheated leftovers in front of me. She'd pour expensive wines for everyone else while offering me tap water in a chipped mug. She'd engage everyone in conversation except me, treating my comments like unwanted interruptions. I'd tried talking to Michael about it once, but had gotten defensive. "Mom, you're imagining things," had said. "Jennifer's just particular about entertaining. You know how stressed she gets." So I'd stopped mentioning it, stopped complaining. I'd simply endured, because seeing Michael and Emma was worth any amount of Jennifer's disdain. The text from Emma the night before should have been my second warning. My 12-year-old granddaughter had sent me a message at nearly midnight. "Grandma, please come tomorrow. Something important is happening. I need you there." When I'd tried to call her back, her phone went straight to voicemail. I pulled into their driveway at exactly 5 o'clock, as instructed. Their colonial-style house looked immaculate as always, with Jennifer's prized rose bushes flanking the walkway. Through the dining room window, I could see movement and hear laughter. My stomach tightened. They'd already started without me. I knocked and waited. It took 3 more knocks before Jennifer finally opened the door, her smile as fake as the designer handbag she constantly carried. "Oh, Brooklyn," she said, using my name like it left a bad taste in her mouth. "You're here," Michael said. 5 o'clock. I replied, keeping my voice pleasant. "Did he? Well, come in, I suppose." The house smelled incredible, like butter and garlic, and fresh herbs. As Jennifer led me toward the dining room, I could hear Harold's booming voice telling one of his golf stories. Margaret's tinkling laugh followed, the one she reserved for when she wanted everyone to know how charming she found her husband. When we entered the dining room, my breath caught. The table looked like something from a luxury magazine. Crystal glasses sparkled in the light from the chandelier. China plates I'd never seen before held massive red lobsters, their claws cracked open to reveal succulent meat. Prime rib sat on a silver platter, pink and perfect. Bowls of drawn butter were stationed around the table like small golden pools. A bottle of champagne sat in an ice bucket, and I could see it was the expensive kind, the type Samuel and I used to save for our anniversary. Harold and Margaret looked up from their plates, their faces shifting from contentment to surprise. Michael wouldn't meet my eyes, suddenly very interested in his lobster. Emma started to stand, but Jennifer's hand on her shoulder pushed her back down. Where should I sit? I asked, noticing there was no place setting for me. Jennifer's smile widened. Oh, we don't serve extra food, she announced, walking to the sideboard and picking up a single glass of water. She pushed it toward me, the water sloshing slightly. You should know your place, Mom. The room went silent. Even Harold stopped mid-chew. I looked at the glass of water, then at my son who still wouldn't look at me, then at Jennifer's triumphant face. Noted, I said simply, taking the glass and sitting in the empty chair at the far end of the table. That's when the kitchen door swung open, and a man in chef's whites emerged. But this wasn't just any chef. Even from across the room, I recognized the tall frame, the distinctive way he carried himself. Marcus Wellington, celebrity chef and host of 3 cooking shows, stood in my son's dining room, looking directly at me with a flash of recognition in his eyes. I sat at the end of that magnificent table, my single glass of water positioned in front of me like a badge of shame, while Jennifer launched into what was clearly a prepared speech about their recent accomplishments. She spoke with the confidence of someone who knew they held all the cards, gesturing with her fork as pieces of lobster meat glistened with butter. Harold, Margaret, she said to her parents, Michael and I have some wonderful news about our summer plans. We've finally booked that European tour we've been discussing. 3 weeks through France, Italy, and Switzerland. Margaret clasped her hands together in delight. Oh, how marvelous! You both deserve it after working so hard. I watched Michael shift uncomfortably in his seat. Had always been a terrible liar. Even as a child, his tell was the way he rubbed his thumb against his wedding ring, a nervous habit had developed since getting married. Yes, Jennifer continued, shooting me a quick glance. Michael's inheritance has made so many things possible for us. It's amazing what proper financial planning can accomplish. The water glass nearly slipped from my hand. Michael's inheritance? Samuel had left everything to me, with clear instructions that Michael would receive his portion only after my death, or if I specifically authorized it. The estate was substantial, built from 40 years of Samuel's work as a successful contractor and my own savings from my career. Then it hit me like a physical blow. 3 months ago, Michael had come to me with a stack of papers, claiming they were tax documents that needed my signature. Had been so apologetic about bothering me, so concerned about making sure everything was filed correctly. Just standard stuff, Mom, had said. The accountant needs them by end of day. I'd trusted him completely, signed where he indicated without reading every line. My own son, Jennifer was still talking, describing their planned stays in 5-star hotels, the restaurants they'd booked, the private tours they'd arranged. Each word was another twist of the knife. That sounds expensive, Harold commented, though his tone suggested he was impressed rather than concerned. Oh, Harold, Jennifer laughed. When you have the resources, why not enjoy them? Besides, we need to travel while we can. Soon we'll have other responsibilities to manage. She looked directly at me when she said this, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Emma, my sweet granddaughter, started to stand with a dinner roll in her hand. Grandma, would you like some bread? Sit down, Emma, Jennifer snapped. Your grandmother is on a special diet. Isn't that right, Brooklyn? You need to watch what you eat at your age. Mom's not on any diet, Michael finally spoke, but his voice was weak, uncertain. Oh, but she should be, Jennifer replied smoothly. In fact, that's part of what we wanted to discuss today. Brooklyn, we're all concerned about your health and well-being, living alone in that big house, trying to maintain it all by yourself. It's too much for a woman your age. I remained silent, watching the chess pieces move across the board. Marcus had returned to the kitchen, but I could see him through the serving window, his movements slower than necessary, clearly listening. My friend Richard runs a wonderful assisted living facility, Harold chimed in, dabbing his mouth with his napkin. It's about 2 states away. But that's really for the best. Gives everyone a fresh start, you know. The residents there receive excellent care. 2 states away. Away from Michael, away from Emma, away from everything I'd known and built over 70 years of life. We've already toured it, Jennifer added, pulling out her phone to show her parents pictures. Look at these rooms. They're quite spacious for a facility. And the staff specializes in adjustment issues. Some elderly people have trouble accepting help, but they have wonderful programs to address that. Adjustment issues. Is that what they were calling it when an old woman didn't want to be locked away while her money was stolen? Margaret leaned over to look at the photos. Oh, this does look nice. Much better than struggling alone, don't you think, Brooklyn? I took a sip of my water, letting the silence stretch out. Emma was staring at her plate now, her shoulders tense. She knew something was very wrong, but didn't understand what. When did you tour this facility? I asked quietly. Jennifer's smile faltered for just a second. Last month. We wanted to have options ready for when the time came. And when exactly did you decide the time had come? Well, that's what today is about, Jennifer said, regaining her composure. An intervention of sorts. Michael, tell your mother about the incident. Michael looked confused. What incident? Jennifer's jaw tightened. The one where she got confused at the grocery store. Remember? You told me about it. I never told you about any incident, Michael said slowly. Yes, you did. You said she couldn't remember where she parked. I almost laughed. The only time I'd had trouble finding my car was when Jennifer had borrowed it without asking and parked it on the opposite side of the lot when she returned it. That's not what happened, I said calmly. But I find it interesting that you're so eager to diagnose me with memory problems, especially when you seem to have forgotten that accessing someone's financial accounts without permission is fraud. The room went very still. Jennifer's face flushed red, then white. I don't know what you're implying, she said coldly. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. The inheritance you mentioned? The papers Michael had me sign? I know exactly what you've been doing. Marcus chose that moment to emerge from the kitchen again, carrying a tray with what looked like a chocolate soufflé. But instead of serving it to the table, he stood there, looking between Jennifer and me with undisguised interest. Marcus! Jennifer snapped. Well, let you know when we're ready for dessert. But Marcus didn't move. Instead, he tilted his head, studying me with those sharp, dark eyes that had made him famous on television. I'm sorry, he said slowly, but I have to ask. Professor Thompson? Professor Brooklyn Thompson from the Culinary Institute. The entire room seemed to hold its breath as Marcus Wellington stood there, his chocolate soufflé still balanced perfectly on the silver tray, his eyes locked on mine, with growing certainty and something that looked like reverence. Professor Thompson, he repeated. This time, not a question, but a statement. It really is you. I'd recognize you anywhere. Even after 15 years, Jennifer's face went through a series of expressions, from confusion to annoyance to barely contained panic. Marcus, you must be mistaken. This is just Michael's elderly mother. She's never taught anywhere. Marcus set down the tray with deliberate care, never taking his eyes off me. With all due respect, Mrs. Patterson, I'm not mistaken. This woman taught me everything I know about French pastry techniques. She was the head of the culinary arts program at the Institute for 30 years. Harold's fork clattered onto his plate. Margaret's mouth formed a perfect little O of surprise. Michael stared at me as if seeing me for the first time in years. Grandma was a professor. Emma breathed, her eyes shining with sudden pride. Marcus moved closer to my end of the table, his entire demeanor shifting from hired help to respected colleague. Not just any professor. Brooklyn Thompson is a legend in culinary circles. She wrote the definitive textbook on classical French cuisine adaptation for American kitchens. Every serious chef in this country has studied her techniques. Jennifer stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. This is ridiculous. If she was some important professor, why is she living like she does? Why would she need our help? I don't need your help. I said quietly, finally breaking my silence. I never have. Marcus pulled out his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. Here, he said, turning it toward Harold and Margaret. This is from the James Beard Award ceremony 12 years ago. Professor Thompson won for her cookbook From Paris to Peoria, Bringing French Cuisine Home. That's her accepting the award. Margaret grabbed the phone, her eyes widening. In the photo, I stood at a podium in an elegant black dress, holding the prestigious award, surrounded by culinary luminaries. It was a night I'd never forget, though I'd never felt the need to brag about it to Jennifer's family. But Marcus, Jennifer tried again, her voice taking on a desperate edge. Surely you're confused. This woman, she's been struggling financially. She can barely maintain her house. Michael's had to help her constantly. Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. And the sound was rich with disbelief. Professor Thompson struggling? That's impossible. She owns Le Jardin's Secret downtown. It's been booked solid for 20 years. That's enough, Marcus, Jennifer said sharply. We hired you to cook, not to tell stories. But Marcus wasn't done. He turned to me fully, his expression soft with genuine emotion. Professor, you probably don't remember me specifically. I was just one of hundreds of students. But you changed my life. I was a kid from the Bronx who could barely afford tuition, working 3 jobs just to stay in school. You saw me falling asleep in class, and instead of failing me, you asked what was wrong. I did remember him now, the exhausted young man with so much talent and so little support. Marcus continued, his voice thick with emotion. You arranged for me to work in the Institute's restaurant for pay instead of just credit. You made sure I had leftovers to take home. And when I graduated, you wrote me a recommendation letter for Le Cordon Bleu in Paris. You told them I had the potential to be one of the great ones. Emma had tears streaming down her face. Grandma did that. She did more than that, Marcus said, warming to his subject. She personally called the admissions director. She used her connections to get me a scholarship. I wouldn't be here, wouldn't have my restaurants, or my shows, or any of it, without Professor Thompson. Jennifer sank back into her chair, her carefully constructed narrative crumbling around her, but she never said anything. She never mentioned any of this. Why would I asked, looking directly at her. You never asked about my life, Jennifer. You only told me what you assumed it was. Harold cleared his throat, uncomfortably. Professor Thompson. We had no idea. Jennifer told us you were a retired home economics teacher who needed family support. Home economics. Marcus looked appalled. She has a doctorate from the Sorbonne. She studied under Paul Bocuse himself. Michael's face had gone gray. Mom, why didn't you tell me? All these years, I thought you were just getting by on Dad's pension. You thought what you wanted to think, I replied, though not unkindly. Or rather, you thought what Jennifer wanted you to think. Marcus walked back to his tray and picked up the soufflé. With great ceremony, he placed it in front of me. Not at the center of the table where Jennifer sat. Professor, I've been perfecting this recipe for 10 years, based on the technique you taught me. Would you do me the honor of trying it? Jennifer stood again, her hands shaking. This is our dinner party. Marcus, you're overstepping. Actually, Marcus said coolly, I'm done here. I only took this job as a favor to my booking agent, but I won't cook another thing in a house where Brooklyn Thompson is treated like this. He pulled off his chef's hat. Professor, I'd be honored to cook for you anytime, anywhere, for free. You have my personal number now. Marcus, you can't just leave. Jennifer's voice had risen to nearly a shriek. Watch me, he said. Then he turned back to me. Professor, did you ever open those other restaurants you were planning? The ones in Chicago and Boston? I nodded slowly. I did. All 3 are doing well. The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer stood there, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Her parents looked mortified. Emma was beaming at me with pure adoration. And Michael, my son, had his head in his hands. 3 restaurants, he whispered. Mom, you own 3 restaurants. 4. Actually, I corrected. I opened one in Philadelphia last year. Marcus grinned broadly. I knew it. Once you told me that retirement was just another word for expansion. He pulled a card from his pocket and handed it to Emma. Young lady, when you're old enough, if you want to learn to cook, you call me. Anyone who's Brooklyn Thompson's granddaughter is welcome in my kitchen any time. Emma clutched the card like it was made of gold. Really? Really? Your grandmother's recommendation is all anyone needs in this industry. Jennifer found her voice again. This is all very touching, but it doesn't change anything. Brooklyn is still elderly, still living alone, still needing care. Marcus looked at her with something approaching pity. Mrs. Patterson, you really don't understand who you're dealing with, do you? Brooklyn Thompson could buy and sell this house 10 times over. She's not some elderly burden. She's culinary royalty. He moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Professor? I heard through the grapevine that you were considering selling Le Jardin Secret. If that's true, I'd like to make an offer. It would be an honor to own a restaurant you built. I'll think about it, Marcus, I said warmly. And thank you for remembering. Thank you for making sure there was something to remember, he replied. And then he was gone, leaving Jennifer's perfect dinner party in ruins. The front door had barely closed behind Marcus when Jennifer whirled on me, her face contorted with rage and something else, something that looked almost like fear. You've been lying to us this entire time, she accused, pointing a manicured finger at me, pretending to be some poor widow living off Social Security, manipulating Michael into feeling sorry for you. I set down the spoon I'd been using to eat Marcus' exquisite soufflé and looked at her calmly. I've never lied to anyone, Jennifer. I simply chose not to discuss my finances with someone who never asked and wouldn't have believed me if I'd told her. This is entrapment, Jennifer sputtered. You set us up. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone and scrolling through my photos. You set yourself up. I just wanted to see who my son married, whether she loved him for himself or for what she thought he might inherit. I found the photos I was looking for and handed my phone to Harold. These are my restaurants. Le Jardin Secret in downtown Seattle, Maison Blanche in Chicago, Café Lumière in Boston, and Thompson's Table in Philadelphia. Harold's hands shook as he swiped through the images. Each restaurant was elegant, sophisticated, filled with diners. The last photo showed me with my management team at the Philadelphia opening. Champagne glasses raised in celebration. These are all yours, Margaret whispered, looking over her husband's shoulder. Built from the ground up over the last 20 years. I confirmed. After Samuel died, I took his life insurance and my savings and did what I'd always dreamed of doing. Opening restaurants that served real food to real people, but with the techniques I'd spent decades perfecting. Michael finally looked up, his eyes red. Mom, I don't understand. Why the act? Why let us think you were struggling? It wasn't an act, Michael. I never said I was struggling. I live in the same house your father and I bought 40 years ago because I love it. I drive the same car because it runs perfectly well. I shop sales because I was raised to be frugal. Hello. I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. I heard you on the phone with Aunt Patricia saying you couldn't wait until Grandma was in a home so you could redo her house and sell it. The color drained from Jennifer's face. You little sneak. Listening to private conversations, like you sneaked around trying to steal Grandma's money, Emma retorted. That's enough, Emma, I said gently, though I was proud of my granddaughter's courage. Let the adults sort this out. I turned back to Jennifer. You want to know the truth? Fine. 2 years ago, I had my accountant set up a test. I wanted to see what kind of person you really were. So I started dropping hints that money was tight. Nothing dramatic, Just mentioning that I was watching my budget, cutting coupons, that sort of thing. Jennifer's mouth opened, but no sound came out. You took the bait immediately, I continued. Within a month, you were suggesting that Michael should have power of attorney over my finances for my own protection. You started pricing out my house, researching what it would sell for. You had your brother, the one you claim is a financial advisor but who actually lost his license 3 years ago for fraud, start drawing up papers. How do you know about Todd? Jennifer whispered. The same way I know about your first marriage, I said evenly. The one where you convinced your elderly father-in-law to sign over his condo to you, then put him in a state-run facility when he developed dementia. He died alone there while you and your ex-husband sold his home and spent the money on a boat. Harold jerked back from the table. Jennifer, is this true? Jennifer's carefully constructed composure finally cracked completely. That was different. Richard's father was actually sick. He needed care. Care you promised to provide when you took his home, I pointed out. His daughter is still fighting you in court over it. Margaret stood slowly, her face pale. Jennifer, we need to talk. Now. Not now, Mother, Jennifer snapped. Can't, you see this woman is trying to destroy me. Destroy you. I laughed, and it wasn't a kind sound. Jennifer, you destroyed yourself. The moment you decided my son's mother was an easy mark. The moment you served lobster to everyone but me, while explaining I needed to know my place. I stood, smoothing down my simple dress, the one Jennifer had mocked when I arrived. You want to know about my place? My place is at the head of an empire I built with my own hands and mind. My place is in the Food and Wine Hall of Fame, inducted 5 years ago. My place is on the board of directors for 3 culinary schools and 2 food banks. Michael was crying now, not even trying to hide it. Mom, I signed those papers. The ones you mentioned. I thought I was helping. Thought you needed the money. I know you did, son. But I didn't sign them. My lawyer has some very interesting documents, with forgeries of my signature. Jennifer's brother Todd did a decent job, but not good enough to fool a forensic document examiner. Jennifer stumbled backward, catching herself on her chair. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. I've been recording our conversations for 6 months. Every phone call where you discussed putting me in a home, every meeting with Todd about accessing my accounts, every lie you told about my mental state. I pulled a small recorder from my purse and set it on the table. The beauty of single-party consent states, Jennifer, I only needed my own permission to record. You were testing us, Michael said hollowly. This whole time, you were testing us. No, Michael. I was protecting myself. There's a difference. I wanted to trust you. Wanted to believe that my son would never betray me for money. But you did. The moment Jennifer suggested it, you went along with it. Emma got up and walked around the table to stand next to me. I want to live with Grandma, she announced. I don't want to stay here anymore, Jennifer laughed bitterly. You can't just take my daughter. I'm not taking anyone, I replied. But Emma is old enough to have a say in where she lives, and given what's about to happen, the court will certainly take her wishes into consideration. What's about to happen? Harold asked, though he looked like he already knew the answer. Tomorrow morning, my lawyer will be filing charges for elder abuse, attempted fraud, and forgery. The recorder I showed you? That's just backup. The real recording has been streaming to my lawyer's office this entire evening. I pointed to the small brooch on my collar, a beautiful vintage piece that Samuel had given me for our 40th anniversary. High-definition camera with audio. My lawyer, Patricia Chen, has been watching everything. Say hello, Patricia. My phone buzzed with a text. Hello, Jennifer. We have much to discuss. Jennifer collapsed into her chair. You can't do this. We're family. No, I corrected. Michael is family. Emma is family. You're just someone who thought she could steal from an old woman who didn't know any better. But I've been handling people like you my entire life. The only difference is, I usually dealt with them in restaurant reviews instead of police reports. The dining room had become a battlefield of shattered illusions and broken trust. Jennifer sat frozen in her chair while her parents stood against the wall, looking like they wanted to disappear into it. Michael had pushed his plate away. The expensive lobster, now looking more like evidence than dinner. I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila folder, thick with papers. The sound it made when I set it on the table was like thunder in the silent room. "Let me show you exactly what you tried to do," I said, opening the folder with deliberate calm. "These are copies of the documents Todd prepared. The ones with my forged signature." Jennifer's eyes darted to the papers, then to the door, as if calculating whether she could run, but we all knew there was nowhere to go. "This first one," I continued, spreading the paper out so everyone could see, "transfers power of attorney to Michael, but with Jennifer listed as secondary authority. Interesting detail. That. The real form I was asked to sign didn't mention your name at all, Jennifer." Michael leaned forward, his face etched with disbelief. "I never saw her name on the document." "That's because Todd created two versions. One for you to see, one for the banks." I pulled out another paper. "This one grants access to my investment accounts. Notice the signature. It's good. But look at the way the B curves in Brooklyn. I haven't written it that way since 1995, when I had carpal tunnel surgery and had to adjust my penmanship." Harold picked up one of the papers, studying it with the eye of someone who'd spent 40 years in banking before retirement. "This is definitely forgery. The pressure points are all wrong. Someone was tracing." "Todd was always good at art," Jennifer said weakly, then realized what she'd just admitted. "Yes, he was." I agreed. Good enough to fool a casual glance, but not good enough to fool a forensic expert. Dr. Patricia Yanamoto, to be specific. Shez testified in over 200 fraud cases. She was quite fascinated by your brother's technique. I pulled out another document. This one's my favorite. It's the application for a home equity line of credit on my house. The one that would have given you access to $800,000. You were going to drain it slowly, weren't you? Small transfers that might go unnoticed by an elderly woman who you'd convinced was losing her memory. Emma, still standing beside me, gasped. 800,000? They were going to steal that much. "Oh, that was just the start," I said, pulling out more papers. "Here is the plan," Todd emailed Jennifer. I particularly enjoyed the part where he suggested gradually increasing my medication to make me more compliant. "The medication for dementia that I don't have and don't take." Margaret made a sound like she'd been punched. "Jennifer, you were going to drug your mother-in-law?" "It's not like that," Jennifer protested. "Todd said it was just to help her relax, to make the transition easier." "The transition to stealing everything I'd worked for," I said flatly. "But here's the thing, Jennifer. I've known about Todd's history for months. Would you like to hear what my private investigator found?" Without waiting for an answer, I pulled out a thick report bound in black. "Todd Patterson, disbarred 3 years ago for embezzling client funds. 2 settlements out of court for elder financial abuse. Currently under investigation in Oregon for a similar scheme with another family. Oh, and he's not actually a financial advisor anymore. He sells used cars in Tacoma." Jennifer's facade finally crumbled completely. "You hired a private investigator 6 months ago when you first started pushing for power of attorney. His name is James Reeves, former FBI Financial Crimes Division. Has very thorough." I flipped through pages of the report. "For instance, he found out about your interesting history with your first husband's family. Did you know your former father-in-law's daughter hired him 2 years ago? She's building quite a case against you. That has nothing to do with this," Jennifer stammered. "Actually, it establishes a pattern of behavior. Very useful in court." I pulled out my phone and showed them a recording app. "Every conversation we've had about my finances, my mental state, my future, has been recorded. Every call with Todd where you discussed the plan. Even the meeting you had at Starbucks last Tuesday where you told him to move faster because you wanted to book a vacation home in Aspen. Michael's head snapped up. You met with Todd last Tuesday? You told me you were at a doctor's appointment with Emma. Emma nodded vigorously. She made me sit in the car for 2 hours while she talked to Uncle Todd. I wasn't even sick. I pulled out another document. This one with an official seal. This is a restraining order. Signed by a judge yesterday. Todd is not allowed within 500 feet of me or my properties. It goes into effect at midnight tonight. Jennifer laughed, but it was a broken sound. You think you've won? You've just destroyed your own family. Michael will never forgive you for this. That's Michael's choice, I said, looking at my son. But I'd rather have no family than a family that sees me as a walking bank account to be emptied. Michael stood slowly, his legs shaking. Mom, I need to know. Was any of it real? Did I really think you needed help? Or was I just going along with Jennifer because it was easier? Only you can answer that, son. He walked over to the folder and picked up one of the forged documents. I remember this one. Jennifer told me you'd already signed it, that we just needed to file it. She said you were getting forgetful, that you'd signed it and didn't remember. I never signed anything, I said gently. Every document with my signature from the last 6 months has been verified by my lawyer. The only papers I signed were decoys, with blank signature pages that went straight to my attorney. Harold suddenly spoke up, his voice harsh. Jennifer, we're leaving. Now. Daddy, you don't understand. Jennifer started. I understand perfectly. Harold cut her off. You're exactly like your brother. We spent $30,000 on his legal defense 3 years ago, and you swore you were nothing like him. But you're worse. At least he targeted strangers. Margaret was already gathering her coat. Brooklyn. Professor Thompson. I am deeply, profoundly sorry. We had no idea. If we'd known any of this, we would have put a stop to it immediately. I believe you, I said, and I meant it. You're victims too, in a way. Jennifer lied to everyone. As her parents headed for the door, Jennifer made one last desperate attempt. You can't prove I knew the signatures were forged. Todd did that on his own. I'll testify against him. I smiled then, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Oh, Jennifer. You really should have been more careful about what you said when you thought no one was listening. I pulled out my phone one more time and hit play on a recording. Jennifer's voice filled the room. I don't care how you do it, Todd. Just get her signature on those papers. If we have to, well, say she's losing it mentally. I've been documenting every little thing. Every time she forgets where she puts her keys, or can't remember if she told me something. By the time we're done, everyone will believe she needs full-time care. And once she's in that home, we'll have access to everything. Todd's voice responded. And if she fights it, she won't be able to. Not once we have power of attorney. Well, sell her restaurants, her house, everything. Michael's too stupid to question it if I phrase it right. I stopped the recording. Michael had gone completely white. That was from 3 weeks ago, I said quietly. Your wife called your own husband stupid, Michael. She plotted to lock me away and steal everything I'd built. And she was happy to destroy you in the process. The recording had barely finished playing when my phone buzzed with an incoming video call. Patricia Chen's name appeared on the screen. I accepted the call and propped the phone against a water glass so everyone could see. Patricia's face appeared, professional and composed, despite it being Sunday evening. Behind her, I could see what looked like a police station. Good evening, everyone, Patricia said, her voice carrying the authority of 30 years in legal practice. I've been monitoring this entire dinner, as Brooklyn mentioned. What I've witnessed constitutes multiple felonies, including conspiracy to commit elder abuse, attempted fraud, and forgery. Jennifer stood so quickly her chair toppled backward. You can't do this. This is entrapment. I'll sue for invasion of privacy. Patricia's expression didn't change. Mrs. Patterson, Washington is a 2-party consent state for recordings. That's true. However, Brooklyn's home, where you've admitted to crimes, changes things. Moreover, You were informed you were being recorded when Brooklyn showed you the device. You chose to continue talking. The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension like a knife. Everyone froze. That would be the police, Patricia said calmly. Brooklyn, they have the warrant. Michael walked to the door. Like a man in a dream, 2 uniformed officers stood on the porch, along with a detective in a dark suit. We're looking for Jennifer Patterson, the detective said, showing his badge. I'm Detective Robert Cole, with the Elder Abuse Prevention Unit. Jennifer backed away, stumbling over the fallen chair. You can't arrest me in my own home. I haven't done anything wrong. Detective Cole entered the dining room, taking in the scene with experienced eyes. Mrs. Patterson, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, conspiracy to commit fraud, and forgery. She's not vulnerable, Jennifer shrieked, pointing at me. She owns 4 restaurants. She's been lying to us. Being successful doesn't make someone less vulnerable to financial exploitation, Detective Cole replied. In fact, it often makes them bigger targets. He nodded to the officers. Please take Mrs. Patterson into custody. As the officers approached with handcuffs, Jennifer made a break for the back door. She didn't get 3 steps before the female officer caught her arm. Mrs. Patterson, don't make this worse, the officer said firmly. Emma pressed against my side, trembling. I put my arm around her as we watched her mother being handcuffed. Michael! Jennifer screamed. Do something! Call our lawyer! Michael stood frozen, unable to move or speak. It was Harold who stepped forward. Jennifer, stop talking, he commanded. Not another word until you have an attorney present. As the officers led Jennifer toward the door, she twisted to look back at me. You've destroyed everything. Emma will hate you for this. Michael will never speak to you again. Emma lifted her chin. I don't hate Grandma. I hate what you tried to do to her. You're the one who destroyed everything, Mom. The words hit Jennifer like a physical blow. She sagged between the officers, all the fight going out of her. Detective Cole remained behind after Jennifer was taken away. Professor Thompson, we'll need you to come to the station tomorrow to give a formal statement. Bring all the documents you have. Of course, I replied. My attorney will accompany me. He turned to Michael. Mr. Patterson, need to speak with you as well. You should know that the district attorney will likely offer you immunity in exchange for testimony, assuming you were unaware of the forgery. Michael finally found his voice. I had no idea. I thought I was helping my mother. I thought. He trailed off, looking at me with devastated eyes. Mom, what have I done? You trusted the wrong person, I said simply. The question now is what you do next. Patricia spoke from the phone screen. Michael, I suggest you obtain your own attorney immediately. Don't use anyone Jennifer has worked with. I can recommend someone if you'd like. Harold stepped forward. I'll pay for Michael's attorney. It's the least I can do. He looked at me with genuine remorse. Brooklyn, we failed you. We believed Jennifer's lies without question. We're supposed to be smarter than this. Margaret had been crying quietly in the corner. Now she approached me slowly. The things Jennifer said about you, the way she treated you. We should have stopped it. We should have known something was wrong. You saw what she wanted you to see, I replied. Jennifer is very good at manipulation. She learned from her brother. Emma tugged on my sleeve. Grandma, can I really come live with you? I looked at Michael. That's something we'll need to discuss with your father and the courts. But for tonight, would you like to come home with me? Yes, Emma said immediately, then looked at her father. Dad. Michael nodded, seeming to age 10 years in that moment. Go with your grandmother, Em. I need to figure things out. Patricia's voice came from the phone. Brooklyn, there's something else you should all know. We've been in contact with the authorities in Oregon. Todd Patterson was arrested an hour ago on the charges there. He's being held without bail. Harold made a disgusted sound. Both of them. Both of my children are criminals. Harold, Margaret said softly. We need to go. As they gathered their things, Harold paused at the door. Brooklyn, I know it means nothing now, but we really didn't know. Jennifer told us you were a retired teacher living on Social Security. We thought we were helping by supporting her plans for your care. I know, I said, and I meant it. Jennifer fooled everyone. That was her gift. After they left, the house felt hollow. Michael stood in his dining room, looking at the abandoned feast on the table. The lobsters had gone cold. The butter congealed. All of this, he said quietly. She did all of this thinking she was about to steal your money. The celebration dinner before the kill. I agreed. She wanted to humiliate me one last time before putting me away. Michael picked up one of the forged documents, studying it. This signature, I really thought it was yours. I thought you'd signed it and forgotten. She counted on that. She spent months planting seeds of doubt about my memory, my capability. Every time I couldn't immediately find my keys, Shed exchanged meaningful looks with you. Every time I told a story twice, Shed pointed out. And I fell for it. He collapsed into a chair. My own mother. And I was ready to believe she was losing her mind because my wife said so. Emma had been packing a bag in her room. She came back with a small suitcase and her school backpack. I'm ready, Grandma. Emma, Michael said brokenly. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of this. I know, Dad, Emma said with more maturity than her 12 years should have allowed. But you chose her over Grandma. You chose money over family. I thought I was protecting the family, Michael protested weakly. No, Emma said firmly. You were protecting your lifestyle, the trips, the country club membership, this house you can't really afford. You knew something was wrong, but you didn't want to see it. Patricia interrupted from the phone. Brooklyn, I've just received word from the prosecutor. They're adding additional charges based on the recording. Jennifer could be facing up to 15 years. Michael made a sound like had been punched. 15 years. Elder abuse is taken very seriously in this state, Patricia replied. Add in the conspiracy charges, the forgery, the interstate nature of the crime with Todd's involvement, and yes, 15 years is possible. I stood, gathering my things. Michael, I want you to know something. Despite everything, you're still my son. But trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. Maybe someday, we can have a relationship again. But it will be on my terms. And it will be honest. Mom, please. Michael started. But I held up my hand. Not tonight. Tonight, I'm taking my granddaughter home. Tomorrow, you need to see a lawyer. After that, well, see. As Emma and I headed for the door, Michael called out one more time. Mom, was any of it real? Did you really love Jennifer at all? I turned back to look at him. I tried to. Michael, for your sake. I tried. But she made it impossible. Every kindness was seen as weakness. Every gesture was viewed through the lens of what she could take. You can't love someone who sees you as nothing more than a bank account to be emptied. 6 months had passed since that horrible Sunday dinner, and Le Jardin's secret was more beautiful than ever for my 70th birthday celebration. It closed the restaurant to the public for the evening, filling it instead with the people who'd shown me what real family meant. The main dining room sparkled with tiny lights strung across the ceiling, and Marcus Wellington himself was in my kitchen, preparing a feast that would have made my old mentor Paul Bocuse proud. Through the serving window, I could see him directing my regular staff with the perfect combination of precision and joy that marked a true chef. Emma stood beside me at the entrance, greeting guests in the burgundy dress we'd picked out together last week. She'd grown 2 inches in these 6 months, but more than that, she'd blossomed into a confident young woman who no longer apologized for taking up space in the world. Judge Martinez just arrived. Grandma, she said, pointing to the distinguished woman entering with her husband. Should I seat her at table 3 with your lawyer friends? Perfect, sweetheart. And make sure Marcus knows she's here. Shay's the one who handled Jennifer's sentencing. Jennifer. Even now, the name left a bitter taste. Shed ultimately pled guilty to multiple charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 8 years. The last I'd heard, she was at the Women's Correctional Facility in Gig Harbor, working in the prison library. Her brother Todd had gotten 12 years in Oregon, with Washington charges still pending. Mom. I turned to find Michael standing in the doorway, looking uncertain. He'd lost weight in these 6 months, and his face carried lines that hadn't been there before, but his eyes were clearer than I'd seen them in years. Hello, son. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you'd really want me here, he admitted. 6 months of therapy, divorce proceedings, and working in my restaurant's kitchen have earned you an invitation, I said carefully. Whether you've earned more than that remains to be seen. He nodded, accepting the boundaries I'd set. After Jennifer's arrest, Michael had hit rock bottom, but instead of wallowing, he'd surprised me by asking to work in my restaurant, starting at the very bottom as a prep cook. He came in at 5 every morning, chopped vegetables, washed dishes, and slowly began to understand the empire I'd built with my own hands. I have something for you, he said, pulling out an envelope. It's not a gift exactly. More of a beginning. Inside was a check for $50,000. It's everything I can liquidate right now, he explained. I know it doesn't come close to what Jennifer tried to steal, but I want to pay back every penny that was taken, even if it takes me the rest of my life. Michael. I started, but he shook his head. Please, Mom. Let me do this. Let me prove that I'm not the man who chose money over his own mother. I folded the check and put it in my pocket. Well, put it toward Emma's college fund. His eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Emma ran up and hugged her father quickly before returning to her hostess duties. They'd been rebuilding their relationship slowly, with family therapy sessions every week. The therapist said Emma was remarkably resilient, but I knew the truth. She was strong, because she'd chosen to be. As the evening progressed, I looked around at the gathering and felt a warmth I hadn't experienced in years. Harold and Margaret were there, sitting quietly at a corner table. They'd become unlikely allies, testifying against their own daughter and establishing a victims fund for elder abuse with Jennifer's seized assets. Marcus clinked a glass, calling for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, before we serve dinner, I have an announcement. As many of you know, Brooklyn Thompson has been my mentor, my inspiration, and the reason I have a career at all. Which is why I'm honored to announce that she's agreed to sell me Les Jardins Secret. Gasps rippled through the room. I stood, taking the microphone he offered. Don't look so shocked, I said, getting chuckles from the crowd. I'm 70 years old today, and it's time to focus on what matters most, which is why the money from this sale is going entirely to the Brooklyn Thompson Culinary Institute for Disadvantaged Youth. The applause was immediate and heartfelt. This institute will provide full scholarships, room and board, and mentorship to 20 students per year who show promise but lack resources. Marcus has agreed to teach monthly masterclasses, and several of you have already committed to providing internships. Emma stepped forward with a wrapped gift. Grandma, this is from all of us. Inside was a leather-bound book filled with letters from former students, colleagues, and friends. The first letter was from Emma herself. Dear Grandma, 6 months ago you taught me the most important lesson of my life. That strength isn't about having power over others, but about having the courage to stand up for yourself. You showed me that dignity can't be taken away by someone serving you water while others eat lobster. It comes from within, from knowing your own worth. You saved me from becoming like my mother, and for that, I'll always be grateful. Love, Emma. I had to stop reading as tears blurred my vision. Marcus raised his champagne glass. To Brooklyn Thompson, who taught us all that knowing your place isn't about accepting what others serve you, but about creating your own table and deciding who deserves a seat at it. As everyone toasted, Michael approached again. Mom, I know I don't deserve it, but I have to ask. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? I looked at my son, really looked at him. The entitled man who'd married Jennifer was gone. In his place stood someone humbler, harder working, and more aware of what really mattered. Forgiveness isn't a moment, Michael. It's a process. Every day you show up at 5 in the morning to prep vegetables, every therapy session you attend with Emma, every time you choose integrity over ease, that's part of the process. Keep going, he nodded, understanding that this was the best I could offer right now. As the evening wound down, I found myself in the kitchen with Marcus and Emma. She was watching intently as he demonstrated how to properly julienne vegetables, her concentration absolute. She's got good hands, Marcus told me. Natural knife skills. With proper training. She's 13. I reminded him with a laugh. I was 12 when I started, Emma said, and Mom's not here to stop me anymore. It was a simple statement of fact, but it carried so much weight. Jennifer's absence had allowed Emma to flourish, to discover interests her mother would have deemed beneath their social status. Tell you what, Marcus said to Emma. Every Saturday, you come work with me. Real work, not just watching. By the time you're 16, you'll be ready for culinary school, if that's what you want. Emma hugged him so hard he laughed. Later, as the last guests were leaving, Harold approached me. Head aged visibly in these 6 months, the weight of his children's crimes heavy on his shoulders. Brooklyn, I need to thank you, he said quietly. Not for exposing Jennifer, though that needed to happen, but for what you've done for Michael and Emma. You could have cut them off completely. Emma is innocent in all this, I replied. And Michael, well, we all deserve a chance at redemption. Not everyone would see it that way. I'm not everyone. I'm a mother and grandmother who learned that sometimes the best way to fight back isn't with anger or revenge, but by building something better from the ashes of what was destroyed. As I locked up the restaurant that night, Emma beside me and Michael waiting to drive us home, I thought about Jennifer's words from that awful dinner. You should know your place, Mom. I did know my place. It was right here, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what they could take from me. It was in the kitchen, teaching the next generation. It was in the courtroom, fighting for justice for elder abuse victims. It was in my granddaughter's life, showing her that strength and grace could coexist. But most of all, my place was wherever I chose to stand, on my own terms, with my own power, serving my own purpose. Jennifer had tried to serve me nothing but water, while she feasted on lobster. Shed tried to make me small, invisible, disposable. Instead, Shed reminded me of exactly who I was. Brooklyn Thompson, survivor, fighter, and builder of tables where everyone who deserved it got to feast. The Brooklyn Thompson Culinary Institute for Disadvantaged Youth opened 3 months later. The first student to enroll was a 16-year-old boy from the Bronx, who reminded me of Marcus at that age. Exhausted, talented, and desperate for a chance. I approved his scholarship immediately. After all, I knew my place. Giving others the chance to find theirs. Dear friends who've listened to my story, I want to ask you something important. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to make you feel small or worthless, only for you to discover your own strength in fighting back? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself when family dynamics made it complicated? Please share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories about finding strength in the face of betrayal and building something beautiful from the ashes of disappointment. Share this video with anyone who needs to remember their own worth, especially those who might be facing family situations where they're being undervalued or mistreated. Thank you for spending this time with me and allowing me to share my truth. Remember, knowing your place isn't about accepting whatever scraps others throw your way. It's about creating your own feast and choosing who gets to join you at the table. Until next time, may you always recognize your own worth and never let anyone convince you that you deserve less than respect, dignity, and love.